I'm Mark Small, Civil Discourse Now. It's August 4th, 2022. Um, Kansas voted, seem overwhelmingly, to protect women's rights. They had construed their constitution to protect a woman's right to choose what she wants to do in the event of reproductive health. In other words, whether she wants to have an abortion. Um, it's 59 to 41% people in what is taken to be a very solid red state, Republican state. The last time Kansas voted majority for candidate for president of the United States was the Democratic Party. It was 1964 when Lyndon Johnson won a landslide over Barry Goldwater. But what people, I mean, I've read some people trying to scramble around on the right wing and say, well, there are all these different reasons why that occurred. Of course, the same people who complain about losing in any event are going to say somebody cheated. Nobody cheated. They have already talked about how the liberals were spending money. Please, money gets pumped into politics way too much. What they don't really consider is this. And I can tell it anecdotally. About 6, 7 months ago, a table of people next to where a friend of mine and I were dining one afternoon. It was women from out of town, half a dozen women, and we struck up a conversation with them, and they were late 40s, early 50s, and we're talking kind of loud and talking about how they're Republicans. And they're from out of town. They'd met for some kind of reunion here from different places. For some reason, they chose Indianapolis. And then I pointed out that I'm a candidate for Indiana House. I'm pro-choice. And that stopped them. And they were very complimentary. And they were unanimous in saying, we're Republicans, we're women. And that is a very major point. I think that we lose track of how much people identify with things other than party. That's been manipulated so much, particularly since the Southern strategy of the Republican Party trying to capture the votes in the Deep South of racists, because that's basically what the Republican Party in the last few years has tried to do, is appeal to racism. Oh, they won't use racist terms. That's what Lee Atwater said. You don't use racist terms. You don't use the N word. You say segregation. It's the same thing. Y'all know what you're talking about. So it's still racism. When you're talking about women's rights, when you're talking about race as being something where people are denied access to the ballot, or today where people are arguing seriously that somehow they should be able to carry guns, lethal weapons, into voting areas, polling places. They want to eliminate as much as they can the number of days on which you can vote. So let's just corral everybody into a chute. And that's what it's called in the state of Indiana, polling place. The area leading up to the polls, it's called the chute, just like you're forcing livestock in there. And if they got people there with guns, Ku Klux Klan used firearms here in Indiana 100 years ago. They did that to try and scare people away from the polls, especially black people, because they didn't want them to vote. Now, that's not ancient history. That's relatively recent. But what's being done now is that a minority, a distinct minority, wants to try and control through fear our governmental processes, our government, and our voting. So we can't let that happen. There are several ways to try and do it. One is vote. Make sure you're registered to vote. Make sure your registration is current. They can play funny games with like voiding out polling books and say, oh my gosh, we made a mistake. No mistake. They'll wipe out any polling that they can because the only way that they can try and win is cheating. That's what Trump established. He can only win through cheating and intimidation. So keep that in mind. Kansas showed something that's very important, and as an added lesson from Kansas is this: we cannot allow one of the two major political parties in the United States, Republican Party, to be controlled by bigots and idiots. And that's what it is. They want to call people rhinos who are progressive, Republicans in name only. The history of the Republican Party has been progressive for the most part. It was started in response to calls for abolition of slavery in 1854. A lot of its history has been progressive. They saw an opportunity to take over a not-for-profit corporation, hijack it, happen to be a political party, and they're trying to take all the power that they can by using that. Once they get power, they're not going to give it up. I'm Mark Small of Civil Discourse Now. August 4th, 2022. Make sure you're registered to vote. Make sure you vote. When I worked the polls in 2006, the people working the polls from both major political parties, I mean, we wanted to make sure everybody voted. And we wanted to do anything we could to facilitate people being able to vote. Very polite to people with their little stickers, you know. We didn't discourage people. So make sure you're registered to vote. I don't care who you're voting for. I'll try to argue why you should vote for progressive people and why what Trump has formed in this country has been horrific. You need to be registered because no matter what, you need to cast a vote. If you're eligible to vote, make sure you're registered. Mark Small, Civil Discourse Now, August 4th, 2022. Peace, love, happiness. Nanu, nanu, may the force be with you always.